So I'm going to introduce, we have a stand-in today. Jeff's not able to be with us, and we have Dr. BJ Baule, who's a student of Jeff's and comes highly recommended to handle our weather today. And as he's preparing, I would just like to remind everyone to put your questions again in the chat. And BJ, welcome, and give us some good news.
All right. Well, I'll give it a try. So good morning, everybody. As was introduced, I'm BJ Baule. I'm a climatologist, and I work with Jeff Andreessen in the Department of Geography, Environment, and Spatial Sciences here at MSU. So here we're just going to give a brief talk about, what we've seen the last 7 days and what we can expect looking forward in terms of the weather for Michigan. So when we look at what's been going on with temperature for the last week across the state, we've noticed that temperatures have ranged anywhere from about 1 degree below average way down there in the southwest corner of the state. Going north, things have been near average. And once you get up north of Clare, north of Grand Rapids, we started to see more above normal temperatures. So we've really seen this gradient across the state in terms of how temperatures have departed from normal. So in the north, seen a little bit warmer conditions over the southern part of the state, mostly near normal for the last week. In terms of what we saw for rainfall, we saw quite a bit of rain last weekend. It was a nice change from what we'd seen the previous weeks, but most of what we saw across the state, we saw totals down in the south ranging from about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch across the southern lower. Up towards mid-Michigan, we saw those totals come up a little bit towards 1/2 inch to 1 inch in some cases, with some isolated areas around the Lansing area, actually, where we got about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of rainfall. And then as you went up north towards Traverse City, we saw some totals areas where we saw about 2 to almost 3 inches in some isolated areas. Now that's quite a bit of rain for us this time of year, but if you looked over west of the lake with that low pressure system that was moving through last weekend, areas around Milwaukee saw anywhere from about 5 to 6 inches of rain. So the heaviest rain totals that we saw with that system were actually west of Lake Michigan, and we kind of got what was east of there. So what we've seen in terms of growing degree day totals through base 50 for corn versus normal, so what we'd see in the average year across Michigan, so far since May 1st, growing degree day totals have ranged anywhere from about 100 to about 100 degree days above normal in the western lower part of the state. As we moved east, we've seen those growing degree day departures increase. So when you're over in southeast Michigan, approaching the Detroit metro or north of there, we're actually seeing some totals that are anywhere from 200 to 300 growing degree days above that normal. And as you move north, where we've seen some cooler conditions over the summer, those totals fall off a little bit. But the overall message is that since May 1st, things have been warmer than normal overall, and we've seen those growing degree day totals come up and they're higher than normal. So that should help, as crops reach maturity and things start going into dry down, things are probably a little bit ahead of schedule, particularly in the lower part of the state. So looking forward over the next couple of days, so this is a surface map showing the weather conditions out there this morning. If you're out in Michigan, you'll notice it's a pretty clear, nice, cool morning. And there's not much of a chance for precipitation as we move through today and the next couple of days. But if you notice on that map, there's a frontal boundary just parked southwest of Michigan associated with a low pressure system that's currently over the Dakotas. And that's going to push into our area over the next day. And we're really going to see temperatures come up starting tomorrow. So as we go into Friday, we're going to see highs jump up probably into the low 80s across much of the lower. And that's going to be pretty uniform across the lower. Not much of a chance for precipitation on Friday. But as we move into Saturday and that low kind of pushes into the area, still not as much of a chance for widespread precipitation, but the chance for precipitation is going to gradually increase throughout the day on Saturday and throughout the weekend, particularly in the northwest part of the state. Chances in the southeast part of the state are going to be a bit lower, but there's a good chance for some scattered precipitation later Saturday, moving into Sunday. And that's probably where we're going to see a good chunk of our rainfall if we get any over the next week. So looking at the upper air conditions and what things are going to look like starting next week, about 8 a.m. Monday, you'll notice on the plot there on the left, that's a plot of geopotential heights and surface pressure anomalies. But what you really want to pay attention to is that red shading over the Great Lakes region. That's associated with a ridge that's building in, so higher pressure. And what that's going to do is going to keep us warm and going to keep us pretty dry as we go into the beginning of next week. And on the right there is the associated precipitation that's at the same time frame. So not much rain in the lower. The UP is going to get quite a bit of rain probably over the next few days and the weekend. But down here in the lower, things are probably going to stay pretty dry. So looking towards the next 7 days, this is a map showing precipitation totals through 8 a.m. on Thursday, September 22nd. And, most of the lower is projected to get anywhere from 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch of rainfall. As you move towards the western part of the state, associated with those showers and things that may move through on Saturday, Sunday, and tapering off into Monday, like I mentioned earlier, before that ridge really builds in, we'll probably be looking at totals anywhere from maybe 1/2 inch up to 3/4 of an inch, and maybe up to an inch in some isolated areas along the Lake Michigan coast and as you move north into the state. But overall, things are looking like, besides Saturday evening, Sunday, and tapering off into Monday, things are looking pretty dry, and we're not expecting any major precipitation accumulations. Contrast that to that north side of that warm front that we saw on those maps at the beginning of the presentation, up in western UP over Lake Superior and over into Minnesota. They're looking at a couple of inches of rain associated with that system. So we're going to be on the drier side of that system. And in turn, with that warm and dry weather, for the most part, say that rainfall this weekend, we're going to look at temperatures being well above normal for this time of year, and what that's going to lead to in terms of potential evapotranspiration. So how much water that we're losing through crop transpiration and then evaporation from the soil surface are going to be a little bit above average for this time of year. We're looking at PET rates across lower Michigan, anywhere from about an inch of PET in the south, tapering off about 0.8 inches up in the north part of the state. So that's a bit above average for this time of year, how much water is moving through the system. So looking out a little bit longer, so we look at the next 6 to 10 days, that ridge that I talked about earlier, associated with a high pressure system parked over the southern plains, over Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, is really going to dominate the weather looking out. And so we're looking at, a pretty above average chance for warm temperatures. And then in terms of precipitation over that same time period, anywhere ranging from near normal to drier than normal over the next 6 to 10 days. And then if we look out a little bit longer, so if we look at what's going to happen in the next month through the fall season, those long range forecasts that we look at are really indicating that overall we have higher chances for above normal temperatures over the month of September here in Michigan, and likely drier than average conditions as well, particularly as you get above about that center line for mid-Michigan. The chance for below normal precipitation really picks up. In the southern part of the state, we could see a little bit more rainfall over September, as these outlooks are suggesting. So there's equal chances, as they put it here, but the forecast is definitely leaning warmer and drier as we look through September. And as we look a little bit farther out into the fall, so months of September, October, and November here in mid-Michigan, we're looking at seasonal temperature outlooks leaning quite well above average. So a higher probability for above average temperatures through the fall, so warm. And then in lower Michigan, a better chance of drier than average conditions as we move into the fall as well. So just to kind of summarize quickly what we're talking about over the next today and tomorrow, we're looking at pretty fair conditions today, highs in the upper 70s, and drier conditions, and a little bit warmer on Friday as that warm front kind of pushes through. It'll also be warm on Saturday with highs getting up into the low to mid 80s, and that cloud cover is going to kind of increase towards evening as that low pressure system kind of advances through the region, with a chance of showers increasing. This is particularly greater in the northwest and less in the southeast part of the state. It's going to continue to be warm Sunday and Monday with chance of showers. These will likely be pretty scattered, and this will decrease as you move through Sunday into Monday. And again, that chance of rainfall is really greater in the north. As far as daytime temperatures, today we're looking at daytime temperatures across the state in the mid to upper 70s and warming up to the low 80s Friday. And these low to mid 80s will persist likely through early next week. Low temperatures are also going to come up with that passage of that warm front. And we're looking at lows generally in the mid 50s on Friday morning. And over the weekend, those lows really aren't going to drop much below the mid to low 60s over much of the lower. And again, as we look out towards the next month and into the fall season, that guidance is really suggesting warmer temperatures. And in the short term, some near normal precipitation totals. And as we progress longer into that fall season and through the rest of September, things are generally looking warmer and drier than normal. So it looks like it could be a pretty warm and dry fall as far as our outlooks are going. So that might help with dry down and field operations, or if there's any maturity issues out there. Conditions are looking good. So, and with that, I'll turn it back over.